Buttigieg. There's so many ways we could approach this. Again, Politico broke the story, confirmed now by others, that he's passing on the Michigan Senate race. And Politico here, you say it's the clearest signal yet. It's the kind of thing journalists love to write. He's eyeing the presidential run in 2028. No doubt about it. Pete Buttigieg would like to one day run for president. And maybe that one day will be 2028. Be interesting to see if Kamala Harris runs, if he really does run against her. I think they are genuine friends and their spouses are friends. But let's start this way, because again, we'll tackle this from all sorts of directions. Dan, if he runs, is he clearly a first-tier candidate or maybe not?
Yes, he is. And one, he's done it once before, and he did reasonably well. Two, he is authentic. He is comfortable in his own skin, and he is unafraid to go talk to almost every single audience. And it's not a forced or kind of contrived thing. The other thing that I find, and this may be the most important, usually after 8, or in really Trump's case, it's going to have been 12 years of one candidate dominating the conversation, the country looks for a personality and temperament opposite of what you have currently in office. Maybe that won't be the case, but if that is so, Pete Buttigieg is the opposite of Trump. Like, he really, in so many, it's stylistically, the way he talks, he's kind of always smiling. He's not an angry kind of like in your face guy. That would set up as a real contrast, because I believe JD Vance is, whether he likes it or not, going to basically have to run for Trump's third term. And so I'll be curious to see if the country kind of starts saying we want something different.
Sean, do you believe, as Dan does, that he's automatically a first-tier candidate?
Yeah, but I mean, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about this, but I do think you're grading on a curve here. I mean, I don't know that it could, I mean, in a normal 10 years ago kind of way, no. But I think that considering the current crop, he immediately rises. He can raise money. He's got a national name. He's run before. He held a cabinet position, very media friendly. And I believe this. I wrote this in my first book that, like, I believe that Pete Buttigieg will be the nominee. He has enough of the resume. He's a McKinsey guy, so he can claim business. He's got the veteran status, so he can say that. And then he's gay, and so he checks the progressive box, because you can't be a straight white dude in the current Democratic Party. So I think that, like, he is the kind of perfect thread the needle kind of guy for the Democratic Party. That's my take on this. Where their party is right now. I think he can, he's got the name. The media loves the guy. He's not been held accountable for any of his previous work requirement or position. So I think that he would do very well initially.
Oh yeah, I think I see him a little bit differently in terms of his record and stuff. But I would not underestimate the fact that the base likes him. And we talked about the issues Rahm would have, but the base generally likes Pete. Now, I'll be curious, because Pete Buttigieg and Jared Polis may occupy a little bit of the same lane, but I also think, Pete's not tied down by office right now, and he will have the ability to get out there and try to go do some things that those sitting in state capitals or, DC can't do.
I like him.
I think part of the reason he turned down that, because I didn't agree. Axelrod saying he couldn't turn around and run again. I'm sorry. Didn't know a guy named Obama pretty much do that?
Pretty much. I like Pete and I respect him, and I don't diminish his strengths as you guys have outlined him. I don't think he's automatically a first-tier candidate. Obviously, it depends on who else runs. But let me ask you this way to tease out some of the doubts.
Can you explain that? Why?
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. If you were inclined to help him, Sean, and he called you and he said, Sean, I'm all in. Here, here's my finance plan. Here's my political plan, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, what are 3 things I should be worried about? Not for the general, but for the nomination. What would you tell him his vulnerabilities are for the nomination? 3 things. Dan already knows his, so I went to you first.
It's a good. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know. I'm too common sense.
Well, I'll give you one that you should have at top of mind, which is black vote. Right, he showed extraordinary weekness last time with black voters, and we don't know what
didn't he make up a lot of that at DOT? I mean, I think that's where he overcompensated at DOT.
We don't know what the calendar is going to be like. in terms of what states will vote early, but there will be states that vote early with substantial black populations. So
But
that's
he
one.
knows that. I think that my understanding was that for the 4 years he was at DOT, he
He,
overcompensated for the
he tried.
failures that
He
he
did.
had as
He
a
tried.
candidate.
He tried, but I will tell you that is a vulnerability still. So, John, let's go to Dan. What you think? Dan, what are two others that you would
Yeah, I
tell
mean,
us?
one is he served for Joe Biden. So, that he is going to get asked about, the Biden record, working with Joe Biden specifically. And, was he with it? And
Yeah.
look, some of the things that happened under his watch pertaining to the Department of Transportation, he's going to have an answer for. And then I think the last part would just be, where does he want to go? Right. I mean, what would be his vision? How would he want to try to separate a little bit from the base while fixing his problem with the black vote? Like those three things, I think, are where he'll have to try to, get out there and define it. But Mark, I'll ask you this. If you're a Democratic senator running in a competitive race, you're in the Michigan open Senate seat, and it's not, take Barack Obama and Bill Clinton off, what Democrat would you ask to come and campaign with you?
To raise money or to do a private event?
Either.
Probably Fetterman.
Okay. But of the 2028 candidates, I'm not sure many people move ahead of Pete Buttigieg today.
Maybe. Here's what I'd add to your list, and I agree with all things on your list, Dan, about where his vulnerabilities potentially are. Here's two I would add. No one here can tell me what would he do as president. He's very good at talking about policy general. He's very good at criticizing Republicans. But I got no idea what the guy's vision is for the presidency. Where is he on China? Where is he on job creation? Where is he on bringing the country together? He can talk the owls down from a tree. He's incredibly articulate. And if he were near here now, he'd say to me, Mark, you've heard me say this about the economy and how to create jobs. It hadn't broken through to me, and I pay close attention. So that's one
Can
thing.
I just say this? And this gets back to the tier point. I don't disagree with you to some extent, but I also go, okay, tell me what Gavin Newsom stands for.
I was going to say, tell me one 2028.
Well, here's what I'd say to that. I can tell you actually what Gavin Newsom's vision is, but separate from that, Pete's had the opportunity to do it. He's run for president before, as was said. He had a huge platform where he's on TV all the time. So these other people have not had as much of a shot. They're either governors or they're people who haven't run before from Congress. So Pete's had his shot to explain to me what he'd do as president. Hasn't broken through to me. So that's number one. And the other is, got to say it, he's short and gay. Yeah. So you can say winning the nomination, being short and gay is a positive. And for some people, maybe not short, but gay is a positive. And I know for some people there is. But there is going to be a premium for the party in 2028 on winning, right? It's just like 92. There are going to be a lot of voters who are willing to swallow stuff in order to win. They'll say, I don't like this fact. If this person can win. I've looked at the list of people who've won the presidency. None of them were openly gay. 3 were gay, but none were openly gay. And so it's just a risk. And in almost every presidential race, not everyone, but in almost every presidential race in the television era, the taller person is won. The Republican nominee in 2028 will be taller than Pete Buttigieg. So
there's two issues here. There's, can he win the nomination and the general? And I think those are two separate questions.
They're absolutely separate. I'm only asking about winning the nomination. General, different thing. And there's strengths and weaknesses there too. But I'm saying it's a weakness for the nomination if you can't say to people that's why I think a woman is going to be very difficult winning the nomination. Because voters are going to say we're 0 for 2 with women nominees. So I think it's going to be a challenge.
So two things. One is, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mark, on your first point, no one we really knows what any of these people would want to do. And I hear you that Pete's had more time, but what he has an opportunity to do the next 2 years is go around and do, kind of court people behind the scenes and start laying that out.
Yeah.
I mean that is part of
just to be clear, the question I was answering was, if Pete called me and said, what are the 3 things I need to do?
I get it.
Others need to do it too, but he does, and he's had more of a chance.
He does. I'm torn on whether or not, because he's gay, it would be a liability. I could see it being a liability with certain audiences. I think the question is, do you own it or are you uncomfortable and hide from it? I know one candidate who's very uncomfortable on this topic, and their partner is even more uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
if you are willing to kind of go right at it and own it, I actually
But
think
but Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but here's what you can't do no matter how much you own it. You can convince voters who care about general election electability, no problem, because there's no sample space you can point to.
well,
You
look,
can,
I can. Barack Obama. We heard the same thing about a black man. Yeah, we did.
sure, we did,
And I
but
know people who made sure everyone knew that.
100%,
Country said
100,
it's okay.
100%. But this is a time when electability is going to be a massive issue. And by the way, let's see how Pete gets through the trans issues. Let's see how he does on that.
No, I mean, he's going to have to.
Oh yeah. Look, I actually look again. Don't,
But you know who
financial
could go to
advice and
China on trans? A gay man.
Yes, he could. And he'd take enormous heat. He'd take enormous heat from the base.